All right, so in this video, we're going to be talking about your favorite topic, which is routing and pathing. So we've got our design created. So the final step in every single design we do is the routing and pathing. And that's why I like to break up this portion of the video. So if you haven't seen the video on actually creating the logo using the zigzag to satin function in InkStitch, you'll probably want to check that out first, and we did link that in the listing description. So now that we've got our logo created, we do need to go in and set up our routing and pathing for the logo. So first of all, one thing we didn't do in our logo, and this is a fairly wide satin here, at the widest point, let's measure that. At the widest point of this satin, it is about 8 millimeters. And really, for me, I define anything over 4 millimeters wide. So anything over 4, I like to put some type of underlay on, which I did not initially do. So I am going to go ahead and go into params and do that. So of course, we go to InkStitch Extensions params, but I like using my keyboard shortcut, Control-Alt-P. I do have a link in the description for our video on creating shortcuts if you want to do that. We have some presets here. You can see here we have our wide satin zigzag preset. We'll go ahead and choose that, and then we'll choose load. And what you'll see is that it added some contour underlay. It added some zigzag underlay, and that's basically all it did. Okay. And so we'll go ahead and choose apply and quit. So now we have our zigzag and our contour underlay. Now, because these are not as wide, we did not add any underlay to these, and I don't think we need to, but let's double check the largest width here of our satin column. You could see that's only 1.6, so that's very tiny. So when it's that tiny, we definitely don't need any type of underlay. If we go here, measure this is probably a little bit wider, 2.31, yes. So still well under 4, so as long as we're under 4, I don't feel like we need any type of underlay. Now, one thing that you might want to do, depending on what you're stitching on, remember that was a pretty small column, satin column. So you may want to add some compensation. So let's go in here and let's tell you what are we doing with lawn care here? Let's turn that one off. Okay, I want to just grab this and let's go into params and take a look at that. When we're doing a very narrow satin column, it's going to want to pull the stitches together. And that's why you see this as an option in here to add some compensation. So you can see here it says pull compensation. We could define that as a millimeter. You see it says each side, or we can add a percentage by percentage. So let's see, I don't know if there's a really easy way to see this, but let's go ahead and say we want to add 10% pull compensation. Let's see if we can visualize this with compensation and without compensation. So let's go to the extreme and let's do 30%. Let's see what that gives us. And okay, yes, I think you can really see it now. Okay, so you see how much wider that is, especially you see this overlap here when we added that compensation. You can see all of this has kind of been exaggerated now. So you can play with that setting as to how much compensation you want to add. You're probably, I don't know, 10% is probably a good number. And I do, like if you look at certain elements here, especially I noticed right here, there are some short stitches. So we might put that at 0, and then we might put that back at 5. And you'll see that the short stitches did go away a little bit, and to me look just a little bit better now having that. Okay, so you'll just have to play with that compensation. Let me see here. Let me see. If I go ahead and choose apply and quit, yeah, we don't see it in our artwork here. Our artwork itself doesn't change, but the stitch out will definitely change. Um, so now what we need to do is go through and set up how this is going to stitch out. So we do want this to stitch from left to right, and we do know that our S here is comprised of several pieces. So the first thing we're going to do is set up the order in which this is going to stitch. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to start with this piece, then we'll do this piece, okay, and then we're going to do our eye, top of the eye here. So I'm just holding my shift key down and clicking, and then we're going to do the lower part of our eye, and then we're going to do our G and the big part of our G, and then we're going to do the little part of our N and the big part of our N, and then the A, and then the tail of the A, and then we're going to do the top of the T, then this horizontal piece of the T, and then the lower part of the T, and then the U, the other part of the U, the tip of the R, and then the E. Okay, so that's the order that we're going to stitch. So let's go up to Extensions, InkStitch, and let's choose Edit and restack the objects in the order of the selection. Now you can see in doing that, everything was moved outside of the layer, which is fine. So none of this is in a layer. Now there is one object here that was not selected, and that is the lawn care object. Okay, so that's fine. So there we go. And then this object here is in layer 2, which we'll just bring it out of layer 2. And we'll call that stitching first. Okay? And what I'm going to do with this object is I'm going to give it a different color. And the reason being is because we want a thread trim there. Okay? And we could actually, let's do that. Let's just go ahead and let's leave it the same color. But then we will add a command for this to trim. And we could do that in params. Let's see here. So we'll go into our satin params here. And if we come down here, you can choose trim after. And that's probably the easiest way. We'll go ahead and choose apply and quit. And now we have a trim after command, so it will trim right there. Now the rest of this, we might decide just to stitch it from start to finish. No thread trims, no nothing. Okay? All right. So now we have all of the stitching in order. Let's just take a look at it so make sure that it really is stitching in order. And then we'll take a look at our next challenge. So this is going to stitch all the way through. You can see it's going to start up top there and come down, and then it's going to come back and do that little piece right at the top there. So you can see here, all of that is stitching how we would want it to stitch. So that's the good part. Now, if we turn on the frogs, you can see we have an army of frogs, and we have this, all right? And when you buy digitized designs, this is pretty common to see these jump stitches go in every which direction. And the reason that's happening is because we haven't really taken control of the image, And we cannot have those jump stitches like that. That's just crazy talk. Let's go into the info palette here, and you'll see that we have 18 jumps, and we have one trim. We have that one trim because we said on the swoosh, we do want to add a trim there, okay? You see we have one color change. But that is an insane army of frogs that we have to dispose of, all right? So that's what we're going to talk about doing. So let's go ahead and get out of simulator here and show you how we're going to do that. So this is probably the most challenging part in InkStitch. It's not that it's overly complicated, but it's not easy, but it's very necessary. Now, if you watch the video, the original video of this logo, I have linked to that video in the listing description below. I'm not sure what embroidery software he was using, but when he gets to the point of setting start and end points on satin, you'll notice in that particular software program, it's really, really easy to set our start and end points on satin. Now, it is not easy here in InkStitch. There is no easy button to do it, and that's upsetting. But you know, we didn't pay $1,000 for the software like we did, and like we probably would have to do in the other software that was being demonstrated, where it did have easy way to set your start and end points. So let's just work through this and figure it out. First of all, where do we want to connect the letter S to the I? Well, generally speaking, when we're doing embroidery, we want to connect it at the closest connection point. So the closest connection point to the second object to be stitched is right here. So we want this to stitch from the bottom up, and then this to stitch, but we want it to connect right here, right there. Let's zoom in here. We want it to connect right here. Tell you one thing we are going to do is let's just go ahead and take all of our, because we have dashed lines, and not that it's really that big a deal, but we are just going to change our stroke just so they're not all dashed. They're all straight lines. Okay, so but we want to make that connection right there at the closest point, not down here, not up here. So first things first, let's go into params and see how this piece is stitching. It should stitch from the bottom up, and it's stitching from the top down. So we're going to choose swap rails, and now it's going to stitch. It should have stitched from, we chose swap rails, but nothing happened. So now let's go in here and choose reverse both rails, and now you can see it's stitching from the bottom up. So we'll go ahead and choose apply and quit. And then the next piece to stitch, so this was the first one. So if we go back to our path, is our swoosh is going to be the first thing to stitch. And then as far as the text goes, it's that piece of the S and then this little piece of the S, okay? And sometimes it's helpful to actually put in here swoosh so we can visually see, okay, that's the swoosh and that's the S, okay? So right here, where this one, I need it to start basically right here at the top. Okay, so let's see, first of all, where it does start. We need it to stitch from the top down. It's stitching from the bottom up, which honestly, that's okay too. It's not really that necessary. We can leave it like that. That's fine. Because what we're going to do is this, okay? I need to break it at the connection point. Okay, so there's a couple of different ways to do this. I'll show you both of them. So the first thing we want to do is we want to add a command. So we're going to select the piece that we want to add a command to, come up to extensions, come down to InkStitch, and we're going to choose commands, and we're going to choose add commands. Okay, and then there's some options here. And what we're going to do is we're going to add the cut satin command. So you see where it says satin cut point. So we're going to click on that and choose apply. Okay, and what that's going to do is it's going to give us this little icon where we can move and position it where we want the cut to happen. Okay, so I want the cut to happen right there. Now, if I select that shape again and go to extensions and come to InkStitch, and we come down here to Tool Satin, you'll notice there's an option here. It says Cut Satin Column, and we have a keyboard shortcut selected of Shift Alt S. And when we click on that, we'll just click on that, it's going to cut our satin at that cut point. Okay, so now you can see our satin has been chopped. Okay, now it's done. It's added a rung here, which is fine. We don't need a rung there, so we can get rid of that. But you can also see what happens. It adds a bunch of nodes that we didn't have previously. And if you look here, you see how that's really segmented? That's not a huge deal, but I prefer not to do that. But if we look in here, let's just look at params. I do want to show you this real quick. It is still set up for satin, okay? Now this looks a little wonky because we deleted the rungs, and when the software added all those extra nodes, it threw off our satin, okay? Had we not deleted that rail, we would have been fine. So let's just close that out, okay? So there's several things. I don't like the fact that it changes the stroke width. I don't like that it takes a nice rounded object and adds 1,000 nodes to it. So I don't really care for that, okay? So I'm just going to back up, get rid of that. So I don't care for that. So if you look at our original thing, you can see it's perfect. Look, perfect curvature. We only have a couple of nodes. That's what I prefer, okay? But so how do we make that connection? Well, all we have to do is double click where we want the cut to be and add a node right across from it, and then select them both. So I have one selected, I shift click the other one, and remember what we did before, Shift B, okay, that will break it right there, okay? So it is now broken, right? But now let's just look and go into params just to see if we still have our param set. And you can see that we still have it defined as a satin column, but it gives us an unexpected result. And the reason it gives us an unexpected result is because we have extra cut points in this selected item that we shouldn't have, okay? So now we have to break this apart, Shift, Control K, and then what we have to do is take what we cut, that piece and this piece, and Control K them together, and then this piece and this piece, and Control K them together. The reason I prefer doing it this way is because my vector stays completely intact, our nodes stay completely intact, nothing has been changed. Now the drawback to this is we have to go back in and reset the params. So Control Alt P, for this lower piece we want it to stitch from the bottom up. And so we're going to turn off the run stitch. And yes, it's stitching from the bottom up. Excellent. So we can choose apply and quit. And then this piece, we need to stitch from the top down. Control Alt P. Turn off the running stitch. It's stitching from the bottom up, so we can't have that. So we swap the rails to stitch from the top down. Still not doing that, so now we'll go to reverse both rails. Now we get our expected results, apply and quit. Okay? So, yes, it's more work, obviously, probably, arguably, it is more work, but it's a preferred workflow that I like to do for the reasons I outlined. Now, when you've done it 10,000 times like I have, it kind of becomes second nature. Click, 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 done. Okay? So now, this will jump perfectly to this. Okay? So far, so good. Now we're not done here. We're not done with our S. And that is because where this piece ends, this top piece ends, where is the next piece beginning? Our next piece is beginning down here. So what we need to do is we need to create a jump. It's not really a jump. What we need to do is convert the jump that would exist to a running stitch. So to do that, we're going to come up to Extensions, InkStitch, the tool stroke, and you see it says Jump Stitch to Stroke. And you see a keyboard associated with that of Control-Alt-J. So if I hit Control-Alt-J, you'll see what happens. It says we're going to convert jumps that are not shorter than 2 millimeters. So anything that is shorter than 2 millimeters will not require a jump. Okay, you could change this value to 3 or 4. You'd probably be fine as well. But I like to use 2. And then it says convert jumps not longer than 0. Okay, we'll connect all, trim, stop, force, all those are selected, hit apply. And you'll see what happens. Now, InkStitch developers, I do not like the fact that this doesn't go away. But anyhow, we'll hit close, and now you can see we have a jump stitch. And then I changed my jump stitches to 0.2, and then we're going to double click to create a node on that path, and we just have to tuck it inside. And I like to have it a little bit away from the end, a little bit away from the end. I like to do it just like that. So this is going to finish, and then it's going to run down here, and then it's going to start back up, and then it's going to go from here to here, okay? And it's going to end here and jump over here. Now this piece here, Control-Alt-P to go in params, we want to make sure it's stitching from the top down. It is, so there we go. So we'll hit apply and quit, and then we want this to stitch from the top down, so Control-Alt-P, make sure it is. It is, so we'll hit apply and quit. So let's just look at those first couple of letters and see how this now stitches. So we're going to go into simulator mode here. So you can see there our S begins. It's going to come up, finish the top part of our S, and then you can see that, you see that little jump? That piece is stitching next, which it shouldn't be. That should be stitched last. So we got to go into our layers palette here and swap those out. So it should be this piece, then our running stitch. So it should be this piece and then our running stitch, but it's not. So let's move that down one. So there we go. Our big part of our S, the running stitch, and then it's that, but it should be this. Then this, then that, then that. That's the order it should stitch. It's very important that we have it right in our layers palette, otherwise it's not going to stitch correctly. So now you can see how it's stitching. It's going to finish this top part of our S. It's going to go to our run stitch, to the bottom part of our S. Come back up, and notice that jump right there. Okay. And then it's going to come back around, and then finish. And then it's going to jump over the top of our eye. Then it's going to jump to the next part of our eye. So you see how that works? That's exactly what we want. If we turn on the frogs, you can see that we get no frogs. And the reason that this is not considered a jump is because of how tiny that distance is. It looks like a mile, but in reality it's very, very minute jump. And so that's why it's not registering as a jump stitch. Okay? So there you go. So that is, the basic process. So now we just kind of have to extrapolate that across the design. So this right here, we need to figure out on our G where it's stitching. So where is it? Where is the origin point? Where is it starting? It should start at the top and come down, which it is. Excellent. So now from the I to the top of the G, we need to go ahead and select those two. Control-Alt-J is our keyboard shortcut for jump to stroke. We'll hit apply, and we'll see our jump stitch has been created. We'll go to point 2 on the width, right here. So we'll go to point 2 on the width. And then what we have to do is we have to path it a little bit. Okay, so let's move this down, double click here, move this down, double click here. Okay, so it's going to go up to the top, and then it's going to set and stitch all the way down around to here. Now this piece, we've got a similar issue. We want to connect at the closest connection point, but we could actually connect right here. Okay, so when this finishes, we want this to begin at the bottom and finish at the top. So for our G, let's look and see which direction it's stitching. We want to stitch from the bottom up, and it's stitching from the top down. So we'll first start with swap rails. Swap rails are not our friend today, but we'll just reverse both rails, and now you can see it's stitching from the bottom up. Excellent. Okay, but what we need now is we need the jump to go from here to here. Okay, so Control-Alt-J, apply, close, take our jump, change the width of it, there you go, and now we have to path it. So we need it to go there. Let's zoom in a little bit here, double click on our path, come down here, double click on our path, come down here, double click on our path. This is the part where most digitizers don't actually even do it. In fact, if you watch a lot of the videos that are just kind of like, oh, you just click here, especially the paid for videos. Oh, if you just click here and click here and click here and boom, you'll have an embroidery file. No. What they're not showing you is they're not showing you this part. I watched a Racoma video the other day, and nothing against Racoma, but he's like, oh, I just let the machine do all the thread trims. And there was like 30 thread trims in the design. It was like a crazy number of thread trims. It's like, no, no, no. It's totally unnecessary. You have to go through and path that design properly. And it would be okay not to show that process in some videos, but at least mention it. That, okay, for optimum sew out, we don't want a left chest design to have 30 thread trims. That's nutty, right? So if we were to do that in this example, then we got a thread trim from here to here, from here to here, from here to here, here to here, all the way across the board. No, that's craziness. We don't need that. All right, so it's finishing up here, but it's going to start here. So where does it start? Does this start from the top down? Let's go into params and find out. It does not. So we're going to swap the rails and ask it to stitch from the top down. So there it is stitching from the top down. So that's good. But now the next piece of the puzzle. This piece. We know it ends up here, but we don't know if it ends on the left or it ends on the right. And we need it to end on the right. So let's look at that. Let's go back into params and see which side it's ending on. It's going to come up. It's going to end. Excellent. I'm kind of glad it ended on the wrong side. So you can see it ended on the left. We needed to end it on the right. Okay, and you see that little cursor right there. That's telling us the end point. And of course, if we follow the stitch, you can see it ends on the left. We need it to end on the right because that is the closest connection point. So let's take a look at what we did here. You see here it says reverse both rails. Okay, so there's only a few options to choose from. One of these options will make the right connection. So for example, if I choose reverse second rail, watch what happens. Craziness, right? Well, what if I choose reverse the first rail? Even more craziness, right? So it seems like the only option is to reverse both rails or don't reverse. So what if we choose that? Don't reverse. Then it stitches from the top down. Well, I can't have it stitched from the top down. I need it to stitch from the bottom up. So if I choose automatic, it's stitching from the top down. So it would seem like the only other choice is to stitch from the bottom up. But if I choose reverse both rails, yes, it's stitching from the bottom up, but it's ending on the left. But I've chose all the options there were to choose. Technically, all that's true, okay? But there is one other option, and that is to choose swap rails, okay? So we can use swap rails in conjunction with one of the options for the reverse rails. So we'll choose swap rails. It's stitching from the bottom up. Notice it says reverse both rails, but notice now it's stitching on the ends on the right hand side, okay? So it's a combination of one of those, and it seems like no matter how we think it should work logically, it almost never does. So you'll have to go through each one of those options. Is it this? Is it this? Is it, it's this. And a lot of times it does involve the swap rail option. But there you go. That is stitching on the side that we needed to stitch on. And now you can see it will make that little connection point, boom, boom, right there. Okay, super easy. All right, so then this here, this piece is going to stitch, and then this piece is going to come along, stitch on top, starting from the bottom and coming over. So how do we do that? Well, first thing we need to do is make sure that it is stitching from the bottom left to right kind of situation. And it's stitching from right to left, so that's not good. So we'll swap the rails. Still nothing. So we will reverse both rails. And now it is going in the right direction. Okay, excellent. So now, yes, it is stitching in the right order, but where is the closest connection point from the N to the A? Well, it's right about here, right about there. So we're going to double click on the path, right? We're going to click there. We're going to click there. We're going to select them both. We're going to Shift B, right? Now we got nothing selected. We'll go to our selection tool, hit the S key on our keyboard, Shift Control K. That breaks it apart. We'll select those two little paths, Control K, and then we'll select this path, Shift key, select this one, Control K. Okay, now we need params again. So go back into params on this piece. We want to make sure stitching on the bottom left, coming to the right. We'll get rid of our run stitch here. It is not stitching in the proper order, so we'll reverse both rails, and now it is. Okay, and then this piece here, we need to stitch from the bottom up. So we'll go into params. Is it stitching from the bottom up? Well, it appears to be it is. So that's good. And it's ending on the left. Okay? But we know that our A is on the right. So we need that cursor to be on the right. So what did we do before? We swap the rails, right? But we don't, which is fine. Yes, so that worked. Swap the rails, and now you can see it does still stitch from the bottom up, but it ends on the right-hand side, and that's what we need. Okay, so now what's next? See if you can guess what's next. No, we're not going to connect the A. We're going to do the jump stitch from the top of our N to where this piece begins. Control-Alt-J. Apply. We'll get our jump. Okay, we'll select our jump. Make sure we are on the jump. Point 2. And then we're going to zoom in here, double click. Now, we kind of got one thing on top of another. That's our A. Okay, so you can kind of see why it accidentally selected our A. So we'll select our little jump again, and I'll just use my arrow keys and move it. Sometimes that's the easy thing to do. So we know it connects there. We know it connects down here. And all I'm going to do is bring it over a little bit. So that little run stitch, when that finishes, it's going to run down to the start of our end there, and it's going to come around, and then from here to here. So when this finishes, what's next? What do we do next? Right, we have to select both of those and do the jump again. Control-Alt-J. Apply. Because we're going to finish here, come down here, and come back up. That's why we needed that little jump. Okay, so we take that, make sure that we have our jump selected, point 2, and now we have to edit it. So it's going to end there. We're going to bring it over here, just like that. And then we already know that this piece is ending on the right-hand side. Let's just double check that that really is happening. Actually, this piece doesn't matter where it ends. It's the next piece. It's this piece that is going to make the connection to the A. So this piece is stitching on the right-hand side. It's ending on the right, because we already checked that previously. So there's that cursor. Yes, it's ending on the right. So now, what piece is this is going to stitch up here? We want this to start up here. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to say where this piece ends and this piece begins, make us a jump. Okay. Excellent. So now we can take that jump, point 2, that's going to be our run stitch. We're just going to pat that right to the top there. So it's going to finish this. It's going to run up to the top of our A, come around down and stitch here. And then what we want to do is from here to here, this piece of our A's, we want to stitch from the top. So let's go and see if that's doing that. It is. So that's good. So now all we need to do is take from this piece of the A to this piece of the A and create a jump. Apply. Okay. So we'll take our little jump stitch there. We'll go ahead and give it 0.2 for params. Now we went and accidentally selected something else there, which we didn't want to do. So we'll bring that over here. Slide this over here. Maybe do something like that. Okay. So it's going to finish this. It's going to run up to the top and start stitching our A, and it's going to finish right here at the bottom. So what is the next piece here? Well, the next piece from the A is the top of our T. So we're going to select that. We're going to create our jump, Control-Alt-J, apply. So you see how it's like the same process over and over and over again. Okay, so we'll select our jump. I wish there was a param to set this to 0.2 wide, but there isn't currently. Who knows, maybe in a future version they'll make that change. Okay, so that's fine where that is. So we're just going to add a couple of nodes to control that path a little bit. I'm more or less happy with that. Okay, right down the middle of our satin. That'll be fine. So now this is going to finish down here, and then we need this piece to start. Maybe what we'll do is we won't do this this way. So what we're going to do, we're going to finish this piece. Okay, so we're going to change our stitch order a little bit here. We're going to finish this piece, and then we're going to come down and start this piece. So this needs to just slide down one. So watch. We we stitch that, which is path 4, or it looks path 8, and we come here to path 9. But on path 9, we need to stitch from the bottom up. So let's do that. Let's look at how it's stitching in params right now. And it's stitching from the top down, so we want to stitch from the bottom up. So we are going to have to use reverse both rails. Okay, and we'll go ahead and hit apply, continue. So now from here we need the run stitch to the next piece. So Control Alt J. So you can see how quick and easy the keyboard shortcuts make these commands a lot easier to get to, right? So there's the jump. So we are going to move it to point 2. Try that again, point 2. And then we're going to double click and just add some nodes on that run stitch to control the path. So we'll put that one there. We'll put that one there. Put that one there. Put that one there. And we'll just pull this down just a little bit, something like that. Then we'll move over here and put this one here. And this one here. And that one there. And we'll pull this in a little bit. And there you go. Okay. So it's going to finish that piece, travel down, start back to this piece, and then we need this piece to go from left to right. So let's check out params and see which way it's going. It's going left to right, so that's good. So now we just need to get from where we finish here to here with a little jump. That's more than 2 millimeters. Not a lot more than 2 millimeters, but it's definitely more than 2 millimeters. So we are going to get a little jump there. So let's change our jump stitch width. So you can see it does start to get a little bit confusing with all these travel lines going every which direction, but it's very, very necessary. All right, so now this piece finishes, and now this piece can begin. Okay, so we want to start from the top down. So we'll go into params and take a look. It is stitching from the top down. Excellent. Now, the distance between where this ends and this begins is pretty slight. I don't know that it's more than 2 millimeters. I don't think it is. So we'll go ahead and ask for a jump, but we didn't get, we did get one. So it must just be more than 2. That is very tiny little jump there. So it must be just a little bit more than 2 millimeters. That's all I can think of. So I just used my arrow key to move it over a little bit so I could see it. So I couldn't see it the way it was. Little bitty jump to the top. Okay, and that's going to come around and down to this piece, which we're going to see is it stitching. Which way is it stitching? I think what we're going to do is we want to stitch from the bottom up, so let's reverse both rails. It's stitching from the bottom up, so that's okay. Now, I don't know if I'm super happy. Let's go back and look at this. I don't know that I was super happy with our stitch angle on our U. So we are going to stitch, reverse both rails. Okay, yeah, I guess that's okay. Go apply and quit. Oh, we grabbed the wrong piece. It was this piece that I was interested in. And yes, I'm not real happy with those. So now I think I screwed this one up accidentally. It needs to stitch from the top down. I think I swapped it. I did. My bad. Automatic. So it's stitching from the top down. Grab the wrong piece there. All right, so I am not happy with our stitch angle on this. So let's double click it and look at it. And you can see why. We have a lone wolf here. He's all alone. Can't have them all alone. We have to, in order to define the stitch angle, we have to have a mate. Okay? So like right here, we'll add one. We've got to have a mate to it. So now, yes, now I will be happy with that. Let's take a look here. And you can see, much better stitch angle. I do need it to stitch from the top down, however. There we go. Apply and quit. All right, so now what I need is where this ends and this one begins, we need that jump. So we'll go ahead and apply it. So there's the jump. 0.2 for the width of our jump. Double click here to add a, see, when you get two pieces that are close together and you're zoomed way out, sometimes it's hard to grab the actual piece we need. We need this fella. So we'll bring it over, bring it over, bring it over, and there we go. Okay, so it's going to run where it ends here. It's going to run to the top and come down. And then we need to make sure that this part of the R is stitching from the top down. So let's go into params on that little guy. And it is not, so we'll swap rails. That doesn't do anything, so we'll reverse both rails. That got the job done. Okay, so now that's going to come stitch down, but now we need a run stitch from where that one ends and this one begins. So Control Alt J again. Again, we'll add the jump. There's our jump. We will change the width of our jump. And then we'll double click on it and we'll change the start point on both ends. And we'll just add something like that in the middle. Nice little run stitch to the top. It's going to come down, and then we need this to stitch from our R to stitch from the bottom up. So let's see how it's stitching. It is not stitching from the bottom up, so let's reverse both rails. Now it's stitching from the bottom up. We're good there. But now we need the jump from where this little guy ends and this one begins. Control Alt J. Add a jump. Excellent. So we need to change the width of our jump to 0.2. Okay, and then we're just going to pull this over a little bit. We're going to pull this over a little bit. Double click to add a node. Right there. So that little run stitch down to the bottom of the R. The R is going to come up and end up here. Then we need a run stitch from where the R ends and the E begins. So let's go ahead and make sure that the E is stitching in the order we need to. I'm fairly certain it is. So it's going to stitch from the inside of our E out, which it is. So that part's good. So now we just need the run stitch from this to this. Control Alt J, apply. And you'll see that run stitch running from the very tip of our R to the very inside piece of our E. Okay, that is the closest connection point. So now, double click here, and let's just back this off a little bit. And so that's really all we need is that little run down to the beginning of our E. Okay. Finally, that is it on the pathing side of things. I do believe, now let's see here. Yes, because we're making that connection there. Okay, so now let's do the fun part. Let's go ahead and look at it in simulator mode. I hit Control Alt S is my keyboard shortcut for InkStitch. So we'll go over here to simulator mode. And you'll see that the swoosh with our underlay that we added is now going to stitch. And then our S, and then the top part of our S. Then it makes that connection with our I. the little run stitch up to the G, stitching from the bottom up, making that connection with our R. And now there's something happening right here I don't like with my N, so we got to fix that. But the A is fine, the T is fine, the U is fine. Oh, looks like there's a little issue with the U here too. That'll happen. We're not paying attention. And there we go. Okay, so that is stitching the order that we need to, but we got to fix our N and we got to fix our U. So let's go in and take a look and see what the issue is. So with the N here, what's our issue? Our issue is right here. We have an extra node that we shouldn't have. So you see that's a pair, 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 and yeah, that's what's happening. Okay? So now, and then we had an issue with the U. Let's see what's happening with that. And he had the same issue, extra node. So let's just add a mate to him, and that takes care of the U. Okay, so now that will take care of our design again. So now let's go in and look at simulator mode again. Okay, all looks good. Now what we really want to pay attention to is the number of thread jumps. So we add the frogs in, and you can see there's a frog here, 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 and here. Well, something is wrong. Okay, so let's back up and let's see where the first frog is. The first frog is right there. If you hit the plus key on our keyboard, that will allow us to back up a stitch and go forward a stitch. Okay, I do understand what this is. What this is the jump from here to here. Okay, it's showing there because it's starting there, but we have a thread trim, so that is going to show us a jump even though it's really not. It's a thread trim from this point to the start point, and that's why it shows over here like it shows. Okay, so that's excusable, that's fine. Now where is it jumping here that it shouldn't be? There's a jump right there. You see that? That should not be happening. So where else is there an issue? If we come forward a little bit, look at there. There's another problem. Okay? And then there's another problem. It's all right amongst that A. And then right at the end here, it's showing that thread jump at the color change. So that's not really accurate, right? So there you go. So we do have the A is mixed up. And that just has to do with the order of things. So we finished our N. We have our running stitch. So our N is here. Okay. That is path 14. And then our run stitch becomes path 34. It should be right after path 14. So 14, 34, and then it should be 12, which it is, and then it should be path 11, which it's not. Okay, so now it's path, or really it should be this one. So it should finish path 12, the run stitch up to the top, which is 35, and then 11. Okay, so now all of that should be taken care of. It's real easy to get that layer stack a bit messed up and then things not stitched the way we'd intended to them. So let's turn on our frogs, and you can see we only have one there, which is the thread jump, and then we have one here, which really is the color change. And if we look, bingo, 2 thread jumps, 1 thread trim, 1 color change. How cool is that? All right, so that is pretty cool, nifty stuff, and that's going to stitch out super nice, super clean. But yes, That's a whole other process. But to get it right, that's the way to do it. Okay? Then, if you want to, at the end of the embroidery, we could come back in and clip those little connectors. But like I say, what looks really a big gap on our screen is actually probably only a couple, 2-3 millimeters. So it's not very big. So you may not even mess with it. But that's how to properly route and path a design for optimum. If we had 50 of these, we wouldn't want to have 20 thread trims in a little 3.5-inch design. Now we have no thread trims, and we have one, and that's unavoidable because the swoosh is on an island. So everything else is all interconnected there, and it's going to work out just great for you. Okay, so the only other thing to do is what we talked about previously when we were making the design about possibly adding a little pull compensation because these satin columns are fairly narrow here in the signature, and so we may want to add a little pull compensation. But other than that, stitch out just great for you. Thanks for watching.